Well, we're a little bit past the halfway point in 2022. And if you're a marketer trying to decide how to approach your events and trade show strategy, it can be pretty confusing times. It's a very dynamic environment with travel coming back to normal, but still some COVID scares here and there. And you're seeing a lot of innovation in hybrid events where you have a user conference, for instance, that's half in person and half virtual. You're seeing events like Inbound mimicking that style of event. And so I'm bringing on a guest today who's the global events manager at a large tech company to talk about a few things. One, how they're approaching industry events these days, and also how they're approaching their own user conference and what they may do in the future as a result. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. Today I'm joined by Garrett Burnett. He's the head of global events at Silicon Labs. Thanks for joining me today, Garrett.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
I thought you would look a little bit more tired, but you look bright and spry. And I say that only because you just got back from Germany and a really big show at Embedded World. So let's start there. How was that?
It was great. I think the time zones are working in my favor coming back and getting some time back. So I woke up really early just because I was excited for this, right? The show went really well. It was our first kind of big trade show in Europe. This is a show we've been part of for many, many years in the past. So it was good to be back. I think we learned a lot, but we had a big presence and a lot of team members were able to join us. So it was good to be together face to face.
Nice. I attended that show back in, I want to say 2017, maybe ish. And wow, it's a very large industry show, very important, very global in nature. I'm curious, was attendance up, down, stagnant? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think the attendance numbers were definitely not where they probably were in 2017. I had a chance to speak with a few of the conference organizers, and they had kind of expressed that expectation, really. And there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, around how live events look today, and that might be very different from how they look tomorrow. But I would say the quality of the conversations that we did have were very positive. There were a lot of really good meetings. There were a lot of great customers that we've had for a long time that we were able to shake hands with again. So there were a lot of good things that happened, good quality conversations overall. So that's something we're excited about.
Excellent. And going into that show, if you know that it's going to be maybe a smaller year, more focused year, what do you do on your booth footprint? Or are you already committed? Do you make some adjustments there?
It's a great question. And I think one that a lot of event folks are thinking through right now. Embedded World is one of those shows that's been around for literally 20 years. This was the 20th anniversary. And so a lot of the layout on the show floor has been very fixed for a number of years. And so I think a lot of sponsors are looking at, okay, do we go smaller as a little bit more of a conservative approach and hope for the best and maybe save on a few dollars that way? Or do we take the opportunity to add on additional space playing the long-term game to kind of increase the footprint, which I thought was interesting. We chose to kind of remain consistent in our booth, which I feel was the right decision for this year, and definitely have new ideas and are excited to be back next year.
Yeah, well, as a former trade show coordinator and events manager, I can geek out on subjects like this all day. So I'm really excited about speaking with you today. And before we dive in any further, just to give context, I think it would be great for our listeners to just hear a little bit about your career journey, including an overlapping company that we both worked at and what you do today at Silicon Labs.
Absolutely. So I would say from an events perspective, my career really started back at National Instruments, which I know you're familiar with, now NI. And I loved my time there. I'm still very close friends with several colleagues who we've left and come back, and some have boomeranged, and the tech community in Austin especially is quite small, so have enjoyed, kind of had a foundation built there, which I loved. And then from there I moved over to a smaller software company called Spiceworks, which is more in the IT space, and led the events charge there. Different kinds of definitions for different roles, right? I was really the only events guy in the entire company. So that was much more of a startup feel, and kind of creating and developing the strategy from the ground up, including our own user conference at the time. And then I moved over to Indeed and joined kind of the events leadership team there, and a vastly different scale, much larger organization, a lot more to think about there. And then most recently joined the team at Silicon Labs, and am very excited to be here. We're doing some amazing things, and especially at this time with, coming out of the pandemic and kind of relooking at how we're doing things, how we're investing, how we're kind of thinking about the goals that we're going after, and making sure that we're kind of laser focused on what that looks like.
Boy, the diversity of those companies is so interesting to me, because you have software companies and hardware companies and a hybrid, and Indeed, I guess you call them more technology services, layered onto software, I guess. And each event strategy has to be quite different as a result, even down to how you showcase a product, physically at a show, on the show floor. So we'll have to unpack that. But before we do, I know that I can't believe you're just coming off this trip in Germany, and then right around the corner is your user conference called WorksWith. So tell me, how long has that conference been going, and why did it start?
Yes, I feel like as event planners, we feel like things are always so far away, and inevitably they creep up on us, which is kind of what's happening to us right now. We're about 2 months away from WorksWith.
Oh my gosh.
The event started about 3 years ago, and kind of the genesis story there is we needed a way to be able to showcase both a fundamental technical training, like a very hardcore technical training for developers. In addition, we wanted to showcase our own new products and innovations, but in a way that wasn't necessarily a sales pitch. And so the name WorksWith comes from the fact that we work with so many great ecosystem partners and tech brands. And this conference has kind of evolved into being that foundational conversation and joint effort, and kind of highlighting and showcasing and celebrating all the accomplishments of not only what we've developed in the last year, but what we've done with those partners as well. So really exciting stuff.
Neat. Very cool. I had always wondered about that, why it was called that, because, and you say it real fast, WorksWith. It's like, wait, what? What'd you say?
Rolls off the tongue.
So it started a few years ago. It sounds like it started almost right before COVID. Yay. And then, so during COVID, what did you guys do with the conference?
Yeah, it's only been virtual up to this point, and will remain virtual this year. And so I joined the team this year. So the team from previous years had to carry the torch in kind of getting that foundation set, which I'm so thankful for. They did a great job.
Yeah.
But the kind of leverage that we're getting, we're learning more and more each year, right? And coming 3 years out of this pandemic, or year 3, and for the conference this year, we're having to think through new challenges, right? There are new challenges around how long people are willing to spend at a computer, how long they're willing to dedicate to something outside of their job, right? When they have families and things that are way more important. So how do you create content and a compelling reason for them to choose you, right? So I think in this year, we were hoping for the best. We were hoping we could be all together in person, but based on kind of the data and the feedback that we're seeing and people's kind of risk tolerance for travel and things like that at a global scale, we decided to remain virtual for this year.
I see. So you had to kind of shift your strategy from your original intention. So what, walk me through, like, what's the duration? Will it look like a physical conference in that there'll be sessions all day long that people can hop in and out of? Or are you limiting the time to shorter time frames or something like that?
Yeah, so we are trying to make this as accessible as possible wherever you are in the world. And so we've actually created an agenda with 5 individual tracks based on what your subject matter interest may be. And they feature a kind of mix of technical trainings in addition to hands-on workshops that you can actually be a part of that will send you a kit in the mail, and you'll be able to kind of work through this in real time and get your questions answered through our team of subject matter experts on those individual courses. So really cool mix. And of course, keynotes and being able to kind of showcase the big news and really exciting speakers that we'll have lined up. But the unique factor about, again, the accessibility, we've broken down the agenda in 2 parts between the US and Europe as kind of a segment. And then we also have an APAC setup. So for timing, and I feel like, some of the other regions get the short end of the stick inevitably. And so we are trying to make that as accessible as possible, which has worked well for us in the past.
So is it a live event, simulated live, or recorded, but everybody gets together in a certain time frame?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of it. I will say
gotcha.
The keynotes will actually be live. They will be filmed, live streamed from here in Austin, and then the actual sessions, most of them will be pre-recorded, but they also have live Q&A. So those session owners, you can still, as an attendee, go in and get your questions asked by the presenter, things like that. So, but just to accommodate the numbers of risks, that we have to accommodate across, 50 plus different technical sessions happening simultaneously. The planner in me is like, let's get as much of that out of the way as possible in the front end.
Absolutely. I would do the same thing. Very sound strategy. So obviously, usually at the end of a conference, you say, and next year, mark your calendars, and it'll be on this date at this location or not. So how are you going to handle 2023? Do you know yet?
I can't wait to find out. There's just so many. Obviously, we would love to be in person, right? There are so many, like, people, again, they want to meet. We learned this at Embedded World. People were so excited that they could schedule a meeting with us face to face. And I'm a firm believer that those interactions are so much more impactful when you can be face to face.
Yeah.
And so it's, if I had any control, I would say we are for sure going to be in person next year, no matter what. But because things are changing day by day, we have to kind of put the health and safety of everybody as the top priority. And I think, again, we're always looking for ways to kind of meet people where they are and allow them to participate. One of the aspects of the virtual components that is really great is truly global accessibility. The barriers to attend, the barriers to participate are slim to none. Our conference is a free event to attend online. All you have to do is register ahead of time. So there are some benefits and perks to both sides of the equation, but I think I'm optimistic that we are headed in the right direction, and hopefully we'll be able to get together as soon as possible.
Yeah. And these in-person events, I mean, as the former event planner for Week, they're expensive, and they're not, even if you charge, you're not turning big profits or anything. It isn't like, putting on a concert.
Exactly.
So those are some big decisions I'm sure you'll be making, and surveying people, and I can imagine even some focus groups. So you'll get some great feedback from this year's attendees about how to handle that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, turning back to industry events, I'm curious what your event schedule looks like this year. So we talked about Embedded World, but other than that, when you reflect back on, let's say, 2019 to now, are there fewer industry trade shows that are being held that you're attending? What's your philosophy right now?
Yeah, I think it kind of points back to like, what are we trying to accomplish? And I think even now compared to 2019, 2020, for us, that has evolved. And I am looking at kind of the holistic portfolio of what are we sponsoring? Inevitably, not all trade show planners talk to each other. And so we are having to make some tough decisions on events that are super close together, how the budget is shaking out, right? Where we can be, because we can't all be in everywhere at once. So I think there's a number of different ways. I think, looking into 2023, CES is a big show for us that we'll be planning for in January. We also have some smaller regional events in Asia that we are regular sponsors of, that will, as long as it's safe, we'll be planning to be there as well. But as far as the number of trade shows that we do, we're very selective, and I think we're seeing different ROI come from different initiatives and event activities. We also are a little bit unique in that our sales cycle is so long, and so to be able to, in the traditional trade show planner mind of saying, hey, like this deal was influenced at this trade show, is just not a true reality for us. So it kind of forces us to have to think differently about how we're defining success and making sure that the shows that we do invest in, again, to your point, they're not cheap to go and be a part of, that the ROI is there and that we're able to prove that.
Yeah. So because you can't track ROI on, like you said, influence sales, long sales cycle, all of those things, what are your key metrics, particularly for industry trade shows?
Yeah, we do look a lot. I mean, obviously sales at large is a big one, understanding the kind of account focus level relationships that we have, horizontal business, right? Is there new business being developed in other areas of the business? I watched Joe Quinn's segment of this podcast recently, which he was always an expert on the account-based marketing. I thought that was really, really great. And I think moving into next year, we're kind of looking at some of those strategies moving forward and thinking about how do we make a bigger impact in the relationships that we already have and going where they are. I think that could be a really good opportunity for us. But, there's, depending on the show, we actually have a few different audiences. We have to kind of look from that lens as well. And the types of products that we're offering are very different by trade show. So the message and the kind of overall strategy for each show has to kind of be looked at individually.
Yeah, it's not, they have a pulse and a badge and I scanned it.
Yes, exactly.
Those days are long gone, but
Yeah.
there was a time when it was
I
all
gave
about
him a
the
water
numbers.
bottle. Exactly.
Right. Well, what I love so much about industry trade shows is there can be so many goals that are accomplished in that one space, in that one week. And, like you mentioned, sales appointments and account-based strategies, and you may have co-marketing with technology partners and conference presentations and media appointments. And it's just a rich field of opportunity. And I also love what the industry shows that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a measurement, and it's wrapped up, versus kind of this ongoing, evergreen campaign, say.
Right.
So I've always been a big fan of this style of marketing.
You're so right. And I think the meetings are crucial, right? And I think we have more tools at our disposal than ever to try to front load that. And, I could say we had X amount of meetings prior to Embedded World, which our sales were ready to walk in the door. The last thing that you want, especially at a big trade show, is everyone to just be standing there waiting for a conversation to come to you, right? So I think it's then people, the more proactive we can be, the better case you're going to be able to set up for yourself.
So is sales receptive to collaborating with you so that you can help facilitate some of that? Or what does that look like?
Yes, we are very lucky. We have great relationships with sales, which I think is invaluable in a company. Sales and marketing has to be hand in hand. And in my experience, they've been extremely receptive. I kind of provide the tools and the foundation for them to be able to book whatever meetings that they'd like. And they've been very proactive in their own kind of customized outreach. At the end of the day, especially as marketers, we think that we know the customers, but the real relationships, lie with the sales team. So thankfully, I've been in other organizations where that was a little more challenging, but here we've done a great job, and our customers are receptive to being able to meet.
Cool. And being on the sales side, and attending industry events, it's hard to find even just a quiet place to talk and a way to meet. And some of those logistics, although they may sound on the surface administrative, they're highly important to make sure that this time can be as productive as possible with this, again, this rich field of opportunity and all these people there. So everyone playing a role and facilitating that, just helps the ROI of your presence there. So
Absolutely. And I think even in the last 5 years, the importance of thinking about the actual structure of your booth and thinking about what is most important. So for us at Embedded World, we had 3 full-size meeting rooms built into the booth.
wow,
So that,
like little
the
cubicle
convenience
kind of
on site.
structures.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
Wow.
building a whole house, right? In like 3 days of setup, but there was plumbing, air conditioners installed, like carpeting, wall, all of it has to be thought through and kind of built from the ground up. And I was very thankful for the booth team that we worked with, that I would hire them to build my house in no time. It was great.
That speaks very highly of that team. Tell me a little bit about, so we coming back full circle to software versus hardware. What are some of the nuances or secrets you've learned for an effective demo for both of these style products?
Yeah, well, I would say planning wise, software is much easier. It's typically web-based. It's, you might need a hard line, but you are on the web, you're just able to pull up a browser and kind of walk through whatever the problem may be. Hardware is a whole different beast. And I saw this at NI, I'm seeing it right now at Silicon Labs. It's not just a box that we send out and it's just like a little tinker. Every single trade show that we do at Silicon Labs, there is a custom demo created with a key message in mind. And
Wow.
our team is integral in being able to kind of think through, okay, what do the customers really want to see? What's the latest and greatest? Can we get that produced in time with all of the different challenges we're experiencing with shortages? And can that be shipped and will it arrive on time? Right. So all of these logistics.
Right. Oh my gosh, supply chain. I didn't even think about that in relation to demos. Oh goodness.
Yes. So, I mean, we had team members flying with demos in their suitcases
Of
to
course you
get to
did.
the show to
You're always
ensure
going to have that.
there were no, yeah, exactly. Those lucky team members, right? No. But thankfully it worked out for Embedded World and the demos were very well received.
Cool. Well, I love what you mentioned about for your webinars, how you ship kits to the customer that actually tries that out in sort of a workshop style. Do you do that separate from WorksWith as well? It seems like I recall you have another series of something where you do that. I forget the name.
Yeah, so actually webinars have been a really great kind of test case environment for us to see how things work before we take it to prime time. And so that we do have tech talks that we have specific programming around that require a bit of hardware to be mailed. And so we've tested that out. We've got great feedback from it. And I think more importantly than the live component of the tech talk, the on-demand components of the tech talks are equally important. And we've learned that, while you may not have a ton of registrants up front, we can still capture their information and send them a kit for whenever they would want to take care of that on demand. And that's been really, really good. Again, just kind of meeting people where they are and when they have time to participate.
Wow. So someone can attend on demand and you're doing that fulfillment to get that kit out to them. That sounds logistically very interesting. I'll say that because you're becoming order fulfillment as a marketing department, or do you have literally order fulfillment help you with that?
We do have a fulfillment house that helps us out with the actual logistics of everything, which has been invaluable. But thinking about WorksWith and doing this on a much larger scale, it is presenting. I mean, when you think about your user conference, you want to be showcasing the latest and greatest. And for some things, those are not even created yet, right? And so you have to think through, again, will this get to them in time? How do we validate all of this is correct? All of those systems have to be in place. So certainly adds a number of layers, but I think at the end of the day, the user experience is kind of a wow factor that, they understand that like you went through all this work to do this for them, and they're always quite receptive.
Yeah. When you think about conferences and industry events, I always also think about the presentations, like in the technical aspect, and there's so much value there. Do you are you lucky enough at Silicon Labs to have some go-to presenters that are tapped often to do these, or is that separate from events where, people from R&D just submit papers? Or tell me about, just generally speaking, what that looks like when it comes to presentations.
Absolutely. I would say our strategy is all hands on deck. We have great relationships with the product teams, with kind of the business unit segments, which are thinking about the overall strategy and platform use cases.
Yeah.
And we meet with them almost every day to kind of help us refine and create this agenda for what's relevant, what's coming down the pipe, what's feasible, what's realistic. And so thankfully from them, we've been able to tap specific presenters who are, again, to the end user experience, very valuable, because these are the people actually developing this technology. And so they're the one creating presentations, delivering the message, answering the Q&A questions. So it's thankfully the whole company sees the value in our user conference WorksWith and puts all of the work into it. And it's been a great kind of collaborative effort.
Cool. And I could see almost every single one of those presentations. There's a webinar and there's a webinar and there.
Oh yeah, that is such a key component. I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, I think looking at all of the work that goes into producing a user conference, you'd be missing a huge opportunity if you did not leverage the rest of those sessions for the long term. I think actually even attributing to the success of previous conferences, looking at the long tail numbers of views, impacts, and conversations generated after the event are almost more impactful than the actual event itself. So
Yes.
I think as events people, it's really, really good to, of course, look at the real-time impact, but don't give up after that, right? Keep looking and keep reporting on that, because there's a lot of good success to be had.
Yeah. And I've seen that done at multiple ways, right? Sometimes people film that presenter, or at least record their audio, and then they repurpose. And then others say, hey, presenter, that was great. Let's make some tweaks. Let's change it up a little bit and then have it be a webinar, so as to protect, the paid attendees content versus the free stuff, if you will. But which, no matter how you slice it, right, to your point, just utilize that long tail and leverage all of that effort into other things.
Yeah, and the name of the game is quality, right? I think there's a number of different, if I'm giving a presentation, it may be very different than a developer of a technology giving a presentation, right? So we have to make sure, all of those different checkpoints are in place to understand, like, hey, do you have good lighting? Hey, do you sound good on your mic? Hey, make sure that, you have a clean space behind you. That type of stuff is always really important. And I think quickly forgotten with all the other logistics, but I think in producing a good quality experience that comes across from the video, especially in a virtual event, that's crucial.
Yeah. Well, wow. Busy times. I feel like I need to give you some time back in your life and start to wrap things up. But I'm having so much fun talking about this subject. Before we sign off here, a lot of the people listening are trying to figure out how to navigate this time. There's so much uncertainty around travel and events, and you're probably already signing contracts for 2023. Like, you can't wait till end of the year, next year planning. It's now. And so what advice do you have for these marketers?
I think overall, we have to remain adaptable. I think events people in general are among probably the most adaptable people on the planet. I think we're always having to just take what's coming. And, the only thing inevitable in events is that something will go wrong, right?
Absolutely.
And so being able to kind of have the plan Bs and Cs ready to go if in case of the worst, like, that is our jobs. And I think the value that we can provide and kind of our self-care, if you will, is always be learning. I think there are new technologies, new platforms, new ways of doing things that are always worth being questioned. And I think from that, we can learn, even different areas of events that we may not be as familiar with, that we can grow our careers in and find different opportunities that better align with our interests. And I think kind of right now is the moment where it is great to reskill, upskill, learn new things, take a course on, different technologies that you're less familiar with, and that'll definitely serve you well in the long term.
Oh, great advice. And, you're a model of that, and looking at your career path and all the different things that you've done. And You seem happy and challenged, and I'm so excited to watch WorksWith and see how that goes. Where can people go to learn about Silicon Labs and connect with you?
Yeah, so our website is silabs.com, silabs.com, and our WorksWith conference website is also live, and that is workswith.silabs.com.
All right, very good. Well, thanks for your time today, Garrett.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.